Hey, Beasties there, and welcome to week 7 of the WDC. This is a big week because if we win this week, we are guaranteed to get the first overall seed. And if we lose, however, we get all the way dropped down to third seed. Um, if we drop down to third seed, that means we are required to play the first round of the playoffs. If we get the first seed, not only do we are the regular season champion, we also get a bye into playoffs. In our way, we have a friend who, Matrix of the Welsh Wailords. Not only are they a friend, they are the number one seed currently. They are the owner of the WDC, and they are probably the person who knows my prep and play more than anyone else on earth because they prep with me almost every single week. And so, with that, this is going to be very tough because they know me incredibly well. And in our prep matches, they normally completely dominate me. Um, so, on top of being just generally a great coach. And so, with that, we can kind of see the matchup. So, looking at the matchup, it is a fairly tough matchup because they have a fairly good way to undo Trick Room with both Stantler and Slowbro because I have problems killing them and they can kind of just undo Trick Room. In addition to that, they have like 8 Pokemon that are faster than every Pokemon on my team other than Tauros. And they have multiple Intimidate Pokemon to reduce my damage. They have Snarl. They have some very bulky, good damage Pokemon like Annihilate um, and Baxcalibur. They have the ability to like taunt me. They have very good specially bulky Pokemon, and then just many disruptive elements. So definitely a really tough matchup. And with that, this is kind of what I ended up deciding to bring. I brought Bombardier, whose main reason bringing is because it does very good damage to Annihilate. Knockoff is really disruptive. I did Assault Vest, and and overall made it pretty bulky. And then rocky payload with Stone Edge because they have a fairly bad rock weakness. And so that's kind of the idea. It's a little bit awkward because they do have the Intimidate, so maybe I needed to have it in the back and things like that. So Dondozo, we had Clear Amulet and Water Bell in order to prevent them from burning me because they have a lot of Pokemon that can burn, and then Clear Amulet to prevent the Intimidates. Definitely a little bit unsure if maybe I should be unaware instead to prevent something like bulk up strategies on their team. But this is what I decided to go with. And then Wave Crash does good damage. We've Crunch to hit some just generic Pokemon on their team, mainly like the Slowbro. And then the Order Up was just a third, the final move that hits Baxcalibur. Maybe it would have been better as Yawn, but these were kind of the moves I just got to go with it. Earthworm is very good because a couple of their big Pokemon, namely Baxcalibur and Glimora, can't touch it at all. Beat with any of their moves unless they have a Terra type specifically to hit Earthworm. And so with that, we can kind of get in some end games in which Earthworm is basically able to 2v1. We have Curse Body Press, which hits most of the stuff. We have Terra Electric in order to hit some of the Pokemon, mainly the Ghost type, to get a little bit extra damage. And then and also giving me no weakness. We have Ferrorig, Terra Fairy, pretty standard set. The big thing I was debating on was whether I want Minto Herb or not. I was strongly considering, Kachu and some sort of berry. However, I decided to just go with the Minto Herb and then the Armor Tome. Next up, we have the Skeledirge. Choice specs unaware, deals big chunks of damage. We have Terra Fairy to get rid of its ghost and dark weakness, and to do some super effective damage into Pokemon like Mabostiff, Excalibur, Annihilate. Obviously, I hit Annihilate even with Shadow Ball, but that's kind of the idea. And then finally, we have Clodsire with Water Absorb to hit to annoy with Yawn support. We have Dark in order to get the Psychic immunity from Slowbro, and so if you Terra it, kind of can wall Slowbro with Water Absorb, and then Recover, kind of just slowly grind it up. And so with that, let's get into the match. So we're here for game one. So looking at their team, we see they don't have Slowbro, which means that if I'm in Trick Room, I'm underspinning their entire team with pretty much every single one of my Pokemon. And so with that, I definitely think I want to try to get Trick Room up. So Ferrorig seems like a fairly ideal lead. Um, Next to it, I definitely want some sort of Pokemon that's not going to be punished by Intimidate because it looks like they ended up bringing Bostiff and Stantler as a double Intimidate. So the options are mainly Skeledirge and Dondozo, just as offensive Pokemon that don't get intimidated. I definitely want Earthworm in the back as an answer to the Glimora, Baxcalibur, And honestly, Stantler really can't deal much damage to it. And so those kind of the ideas of Pokemon I want. I think I'm probably going to go with both Dondozo and Earthworm as two of my Pokemon. The main question is which one's the lead, and I decided to go with the Dondozo as the lead just because it seems fairly good into pretty much everything except the Kilowattrel. And so with that, let's get into the match. So they end up leading Annihilate and Standler. And I lead the Farafra Dondozo. So they definitely seem to kind of be trying to maybe do anti-Trick Room. There's a chance they might even click Trick Room themselves on turn one. And so I decide I don't really want to just waste my turn to just click Trick Room, and I decide I want to try to be able to kill this Annihilate, in which I go for the Psychic and the Wave Crash, in which I think the double up should kill Annihilate if they don't Terra, because Psychic is super effective. Like I said, don't really want to risk the Trick Room, especially if they have Imprison, and also I want to Annihilate down as quickly as possible in case they do some sort of beat up style strategy where they can activate its own Rage Fist. So they end up Terra normaling their Annihilate, definitely not unexpected, especially with the double kick that goes into Annihilate, activating a weakness policy. Definitely a surprising turn one, and definitely very concerning because this gets Annihilate up to +2 and hits itself twice for possible Rage Fist boosts in the upcoming turns. In addition, they get a Drain Punch that does over 50% into my Farafrig and increase getting back to the HP that it lost. However, we do get a Psychic off, which does pretty good damage, and we should get a Wave Crash, which also does pretty good damage, and it just misses out on the KO. Definitely pretty sad. If we got that KO there, I'd feel really amazingly. And so here, the big question is do I want a Terra Fairy to play around a attack into my Farafrig spot? And just go for like a Dazzling Gleam to kill it, or do I want to try to set up Trick Room? Do I want to protect the Dondozo to prevent rage or to prevent a Drain Punch healing up off of it because Dondozo does have a lot of HP? So there's definitely a couple of different thoughts crossing the mind here. Not sure what the best is. If I just want to go like protect Trick Room, protect Dazzling Gleam, double attack, and I decided to just go for the Trick Room and the protect, and the wave crash to play around them, killing the Farafrig and also getting Trick Room up if they don't. And so they end up just going for double attack, hitting the Dondozo. Definitely punished me a little bit because if I would have just protected the Dondozo, it would have been a little better. If I protected in Dazzling Gleam, like I was thinking around two, I also would have done well. So I ended up kind of picking the the situation that ended up being the worst. However, they just range punched Farafrig. Most of my other ones would have been really bad. However, I have Trick Room up. However, it seems like there's a pretty good chance that they're going to undo Trick Room with Standler, so I definitely need to do good damage to it. So I decided to go with the Torch Song, into it, and a Dazzling Gleam. I played Dazzling Gleam in case they don't protect the Annihilate. However, they do in fact protect the Annihilate, and I just need to hope that this double up kills somehow. It seems very unlikely because Standler is very bulky, especially with the Eevee Light. Um, and as we can see, we end up doing quite good damage, but not enough to kill the Standler. And as expected, they are able to reverse the Trick Room. And so here, the play is to just go for the Dazzling Gleam, or maybe even go for like a Trick Room myself to undo the Trick Room. And I want to just try to, as we see, Trick Room and try to kill this Annihilate before it does any more work. I can see an argument for tearing my Skeletor to play around a Ghost move into it. They end up going for Terror Blast, as we see, just barely miss out on the KO, which is huge, and they go for a Rock Slide instead of a Rage Fist, sadly killing my Farafrig, however, not doing a huge chunk of damage to my Skeletors because of the Unaware. Like I said, maybe it was a little risky to not Terra there because if they did Rage Fist, I would be in terrible position because but luckily for me, they did not kill my Skeledirge, and Skeledirge is able to kill the Annihilate. And I do have two Pokemon with fairly high HP, and this definitely can see a possibility of an out depending on their last two Pokemon on their team. So here they end up bringing out Glamora, which definitely don't think in the worst position because Earthworm does kind of wall this Glamora because its only real coverage is poison, ground, and rock coverage. And all of those are resisted or immune by the Earthworm. So with that, I feel pretty safe just going with the curse, and I decide to Terra Fairy to play around a rock move from the Glamora and try to kill this Standler with a Torch Song. So we end up Terrain Fairy here, and they end up skill swapping. Definitely a tech that I knew of. Definitely was hoping not to see here because now I lose my Earth Eater, which means that Glamora can hit my Earthworm with Earth Power, which definitely makes the Earthworm from completely walling Glamora to being almost a liability there. However, luckily for me, I did in fact predict the Power Gem. However, it still does a huge chunk of damage despite losing the weakness to it. And I am able to kill the Stantler. However, I'm in really bad shape. I definitely need a Pokemon in the back that is not particularly good into this Earthworm, and hopefully I'll be able to one-hit KO this Glamora, which seems very unlikely. So overall, I'm feeling really bad, especially if the back Pokemon is not specifically Excalibur. And as we see, it is in fact Kilowattrel, which is probably the worst possible outcome because it does massive damage into this Earthworm. So here I'm stuck clicking Torch Song and Rock Slide. That's pretty much the only options I have. And as we can see, they're going to outspeed both my Pokemon and do big chunks of damage. And they go for the Electric Ball, which does very good damage to this Earthworm, and the Power Jam is able to finish up the Skeledirge. Definitely did not go great. I definitely think, maybe that, protecting that one turn that they Rage Fished into the Dondozo would have got me there a little bit. But overall, definitely feel like not the greatest turn. As we can see, we did reveal Charlie Berry on the Kilowattrel. However, even with the Kilowattrel, or even without the Cherry Berry, that Rock Slide wasn't do much damage. And so here the game's pretty much over. It just depends on who's going to end up getting the kill. Probably going to be the Kilowattrel. So game one definitely went bad. The kind of just need to figure out how to adjust game two. But with that, we just get into game two and see what happens. Let's get there. So we're here for game two. So honestly, here I'm kind of just lost. I don't know how I need to adjust. I do know that I need to. I'm thinking about maybe like how Earthworm seems good. Like I said, I still think it's good. I just need it to not lose its Earth Eater ability from the Standler. Dondozo seems reasonable. Bombardier seems like it possibly could be a good answer to that. Annihilate. Skeledirge has that Unaware, which seems reasonable, into the Annihilate. I think Clodsire seems like it's a reasonable like disruptive piece. I still think I need kind of Trick Room seems somewhat relevant because they are able to kind of outspeed me with every single Pokemon team if I don't get Trick Room. So like there's a lot of uncertainty in these things, and I kind of just going back and forth considering every single possible Pokemon, and I consider a lot of different leads, including Bombardier lead, Clodsire lead, Farafrig in the front and Farafrig in the back. And honestly, I'm kind of just at a loss. I consider all these things, all these Pokemon seem relevant, and I don't really know what to do. So I slowly run out of time. So I kind of just decide to throw some Pokemon in, and kind of a little bit running close to the clock. So I just include these 4 Pokemon. Not entirely sure if these were the best Pokemon, and don't even really know the necessary game plan. I kind of just had all these thoughts cross my mind, picked some, and hopefully they ended up working. Let's see what happens. So they end up leading Mabostiff and Stantler, and I end up leading the Farafrig and Skeledirge. And they end up revealing that they are, intimidated on Stantler, which we know, but that they're not intimidated on Mabostiff, which means that they're either going to be Stakeout or Guard Dog. I decided to protect so I don't get hit with a Crunch or other dark move into the Farafrig. I don't really feel like switching out. Or terrorizing with the Farafrig because I want to Terra the Skeledirge and try to get the one-hit KO with Terra Blast as a Terra Fairy. And so we Terra Fairy the Skeledirge, and we just go for the Protect on the Farafrig, and they end up going for a skill swap into my Skeledirge, which is really annoying because I lose my Unaware, and in addition to that, I intimidate them, revealing that they are actually Guard Dog on the Mabostiff, and they actually get an attack boost rather than an attack drop, which means that they would do really good damage if they crunched into my Farafrig. However, they went for a Snarl. Snarl is somewhat annoying because it is lowering my special attack. However, I am spec, so maybe there's a chance I can kill this Mavostif even through the -1 drop, and just barely missed out on that. So definitely 100% a one-hit KO if they don't snarl me, but with the snarl, it just misses out, or maybe as a roll. Um, so here, the obvious play is to switch out because they're going for a dark. They're going to go for a dark moon for effort because I just protected and I can't Terra. And so the big question is Clotsire versus Earthworm. I decided Clotsire. I'm not sure if that's the right play because Earthworm does take this move a lot better. However, I am trying hopefully to kill Mavostif with the Terra Blast this turn. So we switch out the Clodsire into what I'm expecting to be a crunch for the Mavostif. They end up going for a Terra Blast into that spot in addition to a Jaw Lock, which, a dark move into it, doing pretty good damage to the Clodsire. With the amount of damage that dealt, I question maybe it was optimal to switch an Earthworm there because it does take that a lot better because it has a lot higher physical defense. However, we do get a fairly clean switch in, which that double up probably would kill, and we were able to kill Mabostif, putting us in a pretty reasonable position in all honesty. And so they end up bringing out Glamora. And so there's the big question of whether or not I'm expecting it to Terra or not. If I don't Terra, I can go for a Stomping Tantrum, and that threatens to one-hit KO the Glamora. However, if they do in fact Terra, the Yawn is the optimal play. And I decided to go for a Yawn and go for a switch in because I should be able to take any attack from this Glamora with this Earthworm. In addition, there's a good chance that they're going to go for Sludge Bomb into the Skeletorch if they attack it, and this would be a free switch in if that's the case. And so they end up switching out the Stantler, which makes this my turn feel pretty good no matter what, because not only did they switch out Stantler, they switch into Baxcalibur, which means this Earthworm is in good position no matter what happens in this turn, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. And they end up going for a Terra as expected, which means that not going for Stomping Tantrum was the correct play in the Clodsire. And if they just go for a attack into the Earthworm, no matter what they click, I feel pretty happy because I'm going to get a Yawn off into their Terra Pokemon, forcing them to switch. And they end up going for Sludge Bomb, perfect for me, meaning they got 0 damage off. I got to switch into a Pokemon that's good into both the opponent's Pokemon, and I yawn them. So overall, a great turn. So here, I consider switching out to play around an Ice move. However, I just decided to go for a Yawn and a Curse to get some extra bulk. And in addition to that, Body Press actually threatens every single Pokemon on their team for the rest of the game, meaning that the Earthworm offensively is going to be pretty good. And so they end up switching out the Glamora, which makes sense and is not too surprising because it was yawned, and they just bring back the Stantler out. Stantler definitely can be pretty annoying with the skill swap. However, I am doing super effective body press damage, and they end up just going for a break and swipe instead of an ice move, which honestly I'm very happy with because it doesn't kill either of my Pokemon. Um, and if they just killed the Clotsire, it definitely would be a little bit annoying because even though I have some Pokemon in the back, I would be down a Pokemon. And however, I don't actually care that much about my attack dropping because, as you can see, the plan is just kind of to throw out yawns. So definitely a really good turn for me again. So back to back really good turns, and the Earthworm is now +1 defense and is basically at max HP. So here I just go for the recover because if I don't get killed, I'm really happy with that. And then I go for the body press, which should almost certainly 2-hit KO this Stantler. So there's so for the Ice Shard finishing off the Clodsire, which I'm pretty happy with because this means they didn't switch out the back scholar, meaning it's going to be going to sleep this turn. So they do end up going for the skill swap, meaning I lose Earth Eater, which means I might need to switch out at some point in the future. However, this is not that bad in the aspect of me intimidating Baxcalibur, which means that Baxcalibur is going to be at -1 and incentivizes even more to switch out. And if it doesn't switch out, for example, if I can kill the Stantler, it's going to be -1 the rest of the game, which is actually very good for me. As we see Baxcalibur going to sleep. And so here I just bring out Ferreferig because now Ferreferig is very clean. We can just click Trick Room and body press into the Stantler. Stantler will die, so it can't undo the Trick Room. And then we can get Trick Room up, and the last 2 Pokemon are going to be in a very awkward position because not only are they slow, are going to be slowest on the team when Trick Room's up, I'm also going to be able to threaten both of them very well. And we see they don't even try to do the trick and they just go for a Terror Blast, which, does okay damage. Excalibur takes its first turn of sleep, and we're able to finish off the Stantler. And so now we're in very good position because we're going to get this Trick Room up, and they have two very fast Pokemon, one of them being asleep. And I have not only that, the two Pokemon they have both cannot hit my Earthworm if I have Earth Eater up. And with Glamora coming back out, the obvious play here for me is honestly to just switch back out Skeledirge. This might be a little bit overly safe, but the reason behind this is with Earth Eater active, which I've lost because of the skill swap, I feel like I should be able to 2v1 both of these Pokemon. And so I don't think it's worth risking pretty much a guaranteed win condition for just finishing the game a little bit quicker. Because, like I said, Earthworm beats these. All these Pokemon's coverage are going to be ground, rock, poison, ice, dragon, and all of those Earthworm is immune to are resists. And so with this, we just do a Dazzling Gleam, does a little bit of damage to both the Pokemon, and Skeledirge comes in, takes a very big chunk with that Earth power. However, Trick Room is up, and Vexillor takes another turn of sleep, and now we can kind of just go for a double up and try to kill one of these. I decided to double up into the Glumora because I don't think Glumora has protects from what I've seen so far. And so the big question is basically, do I want to, lock into Torch Song or Shadow Ball? I decided to lock into Torch Song because I think it's probably going to do good damage to both of them. Maybe it was optimal to lock into, Terra Blast, like I said. Um, you know, I can see an argument for those, but at this point, I feel pretty confident I should be able to win this game, no matter what's going to happen with these two Pokemon, because Earthworm in the back probably should be able to 2v1. And so we go for the double up, get the Psychic, and then we get the Torch Song, which ends up killing the Glamora. We end up showing a crit, which obviously they probably already know our choice specs, but if they didn't know our choice specs, maybe that hid the information because I got the crit hit kill because of the crit. I think I got the kill even without the crit, and we also see Baxcalibur getting its final turn of sleep. Obviously, a little bit lucky in that aspect, but also in the same sense, not that big of a deal because I'm pretty sure the game is over, specifically at this point now because Earthworm is really physically bulky. They're at -1, and they can't really hit back my Earthworm. So they ended up going for a Protect, maybe trying to get a little bit more damage, get try to increase the KD by going for a double Protect because this is not the last turn of Trick Room. And so at this point, though, the game is pretty much over. We get a pretty clean game too. However, honestly speaking, I don't really feel like I was doing that well this game. The only thing that I really felt like is that their decision not to bring Annihilate definitely got punished from them. I made a couple of nice switches that ended up being really relevant, including the switch into the Clodsire and the switch into the Earthworm that both basically let me get in fairly clean switch-ins. And so not sure how I need to adjust, but I definitely am concerned for the Annihilate in the final game. But with that, let's get into game 3. So here we are for game 3. Like I said, honestly don't know what I really want to do here. I think one thing that I kind of saw in the game was I think Frafarig um, was a little bit awkward in the lead. Um, and so I definitely considered, just kind of going the same lead as last time. I decided maybe what Clodsire, but I think, like I said, the big thing is I decided I don't really want to lead the Frafarig. It seemed a little better as the Pokemon in the back, switch it in, and then get a Trick Room in the later game. And I decided to just go with the good offensive Pokemon that don't get threatened by Intimidate on turn 1, and then the bulkier, more supporty Pokemon in the back, and like specifically the Earthworm, the Frafarig for Trick Room, and kind of good end game into a lot of the Pokemon. So with that, let's get into the match. So they end up leading Glamora and Bostiff in front of my Skeledirge and Dondozo. And here I'm like, oh, the easiest play is just a Terra Fairy, Terra Blast my Bostiff, which should kill it, and the Wave Crash Glamora, both into that. Both of these should immediately threaten it. However, immediately upon clicking that, I'm like, the obvious play for them is just to go for a Dark move and a Sludge Bomb into the Skeledirge, and that should play around both me Terraring and me not Terraring. And I have a very easy switch into Earthworm here, so I very much regretted this decision immediately upon clicking it. and I 100% expect that to be their turn. And in addition to that, uh, I feel like there's a good chance I might just waste my Terra here, and I'm definitely very concerned as this is going on middle of the game, and just hope that they do not go for that double up. And they go for the draw lock, which is not that big of a deal. This was kind of somewhat expected. And they also go for the sludge bomb, and they get the kill on the Skeletor, which is terrible for me. Like I said, I 100% expected that as I was waiting. I think I rushed a little bit clicking my moves and did the very obvious play. And not only that, on top of that, they are Pasho Berry, which means I actually don't get the kill on the Glamora like I was hoping from that. And so that turn went completely awful and definitely put me in a very bad position at this point. Um, However, we do get Earthworm in, and Earthworm does fare pretty well into both these Pokemon, which is another reason why that switch in the previous turn would have made a lot of sense. And so here, obviously, we're just going to go for a Curse because neither of them threaten them immediately, and I don't really need to do the extra damage. And the big question is, do I want to Wave Crash into the Glamora spot or the Mabosstiff spot? I decide to ignore the Glamora spot and go for the Mabosstiff because I don't really want to you know, I expect maybe a protect or a switch out into something like Baxcalibur there, and it could be really awkward if that ends up being the case. So they end up switching out the Glamora into an Annihilate, and because it was Annihilate, I honestly think that probably Wave Crashing into that would have been better. Because as we see, that Jawlock doesn't do a great chunk of damage, so I actually don't care that much about the Mabosstiff. Um, and we do get the Curse Up, which increases our defense, which is pretty good. And we are because +1 defense Earthworm is pretty good to everything on their team that we've seen so far. And the Wave Crash does pretty good damage into the Mabosstiff, and after the Citrus Berry, it's going to be a little bit over 50%. However, I would feel a lot better if I actually Wave Crash into that Annihilate, because now Annihilate is at max HP. I can go for the kill with the Mabosstiff with my body press, and I can go for a Wave Crash into the Annihilate, get a pretty good chunk of damage into the Annihilate. However, definitely Annihilate. The downside of Annihilate is that Earthworm doesn't really do much damage, especially because I lost my Terra on turn one. This is definitely one of the big sides. Is not only did me losing a Pokemon on turn one, I also lose my Terra, and which Terra Electric is the only way in which my Earthworm can actually threaten the Annihilate. And so here Annihilate goes for a Drain Punch. It doesn't do a huge chunk of damage, but it definitely does enough damage, and which it's going to be a little bit annoying to deal with. However, we are able to kill the Mabosstiff with the body press, and in addition, we are able to get a Wave Crash off into the Annihilate, getting it just around 50%. Definitely, like I said, I definitely would have felt a lot better if I went for that Wave Crash into the Annihilate when it switched in. Um, you know, Obviously hard to say what happens there. And in addition, they end up getting the Stantler out. And with Stantler being the last Pokemon, I'm really feeling awkward. I really needed that to be Baxcalibur. Like I can get a body press, do a pretty good chunk of damage into it. However, because it's skill swap and they have Glamora in the back, I really need to be able to switch out and get back that, um, I need to be able to get back the Earth Eater. And so with that, I really feel the need to switch out and save Dondozo here because, as expected, they go for the skill swap, activating the Intimidate, which should activate the Defiant on the Annihilate, getting up to +1 attack. Um, like I said, I really need this Annihilate or this Earthworm to have Earth Eater. However, this switch in does too much damage. I was really hoping for maybe them clicking a Rage Fist. However, yeah, definitely not great position with this. The body press does do very good damage, as we saw in the previous game, and I should be able to kill it the following turn. And at this point, I think I see my out. I honestly think that maybe my decision to switch out there was incorrect. Maybe if I just went for a protect, I could have gotten an extra turn, and that would have given me a little bit of outs there. So definitely think that maybe that switch out was a little bit premature, and like I said, maybe just going for a protect would have been the best. Um, However, now at this point, there's not much I can do except protect, try to kill the Stantler, and then the following turn, I switch out Earthworm and then hope Earthworm gets the 2v1. However, we see they end up going for a Terra Ghost on the Stantler, meaning I will not kill it this turn, meaning that this game is pretty much over because I am both my Pokemon are pretty much threatened to be killed um, immediately upon entering the battlefield, and they're going to slowly whittle away at this Earthworm, who's not going to be able to kill either of these two Pokemon in front of him because I just don't have good moves into him because my best move is just Rock Slide into him. So definitely feel like maybe that switch in previous turn, the Farfetch'd was bad. Now pretty much the only hope I can have is just them clicking Ghost move into my normal Pokemon. And we see the first move, they do not go into my normal Pokemon with the Ghost move. Um, and if they do pick Rage Fist into Farfetch'd, Gene Trick up, I might be able to deal with it. However, they did not make the completely terrible misplay that would have given me a chance to get out of the game. And the best I can do here is just go for a Rock Slide, try to get a kill on maybe the Standler to improve the KD. But at this point, the game is pretty much over because I am not going to be able enough to do enough damage with into the Annihilate with either of my Pokemon. And Dondozo likely dies from um, if next time it attacks from recoil or from the poison. And so pretty much this game is over. Game two or game three definitely was a little bit anticlimactic because I feel like I played pretty bad. The turn one, which was the obvious play, I completely played into it and got blown out. I think my switch in into the Frafrig was definitely a misplay in which or as in I should have done it the following turn after I protected a turn to just um, you know, take a little bit of time to be able to possibly kill the Stantler a little bit earlier, or not get a switch in because I would have actually been able to do some good damage with the Farafrig. But they definitely played well. They had some good prep, and at this point, we are pretty much dead. And as we see, our Earthworm dies. And we are able to, get a kill here on the Stantler before we end up losing. So we only lose 2-0, but definitely a sad loss. And with that, we drop down to the third seed, and we have to play the first round of playoffs against our previous other coach that we lost to. So definitely a little bit sad there. Matrix played well. Matrix also preps very well into me and knows me incredibly well. So not too surprising that they beat me. Like I said, typically in prep they have like an 80% win rate against me, 90% win rate against me. So not too surprised to see they kind of do well into me. I definitely don't, like I said, don't think I played particularly well, especially in game three. Um, however, I also don't know if I have the best matchup into their team either. But with that, I think thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all next time.